Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you joining us today, we welcome you in. Not a very interesting background today, but you'll find out how it ties into what we're going to discuss today. And that's the idea of the deadly sins. Now, depending on the literature, there's 7 or 8 of them. But they've had a real influence in society, both in a good way and a bad way. In a good way, they've inspired philosophers, they've inspired laws, they've inspired us to be better. In a bad way, they really exist in each and every one of us. Let's go over a few. Gluttony. Now, there are a good number of people out there, even in the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic nations, the weird nations, that are overweight. There's no denying it. And indeed, the entire allure of capitalism and the Western world has always been, come over here and we'll show you what decadence is. If you got the money, we got what you want. That was one of the things that the USSR and China have never been able to offer. Yes, they did have caviar and they had all sorts of things, but at the same token, they could never deliver them as efficiently as the free market could. What this means is that those former Soviet and communist nations and China have, relatively speaking, healthier people than we do, because there's just simply not that much to go around. While we here in the West and the Western dominated nations are gorging ourselves on fat and butter and beer and everything else we can put into ourselves. Food porn is a thing. People do nothing all day but sit and watch TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is, saying, oh, that's a recipe I want to try out. Gluttony. That's basically what we are. The Tibetans have a concept of the hungry ghost, where it's the idea of a spirit that is always eating but is never quite full. So you can see it's not just Western countries that have this concept. This ghost is driven onward to consume more and more, to put as much in its mouth as possible, but it's still eternally hungry. And this is one of the things in the West we've adopted almost as a virtue. We know it's wrong. Fat shaming is still a thing. People are still, what's a nice way to say this? People are still going to cram things down their gullet even when they're past full. The all-you-can-eat buffet is an example of this, and there's one in almost every single town. So, gluttony. Powerful emotion. Red is a powerful color, so you can see why I'm picking the background that I did for this show. Lust. Oh, lust. Now, it doesn't matter what you lust after. Some people lust after sexual conquest. Other people lust after power. But that driving, burning desire that just forces you to do whatever it takes just to sample that forbidden fruit. Now, in a positive way, this drives people to work hard and to excel at what they do. But the negative, sadly, is lust can be very self-destructive. If you're willing to give up anything to satisfy your desire, be it carnal or whatever else it might be, it's really not that much different than gluttony. You're just so desperate to get whatever that thing is. Whether it's a person you desire, an object you desire, whatever it is, it overwhelms everything else in your mind. So we've done gluttony and we've done lust. Let's talk about envy. I see envy all over right now. And it's not even subtle. I mean, look at Bezos and why can I never remember those two at the same time? Bezos and Musk. they're shooting back and forth because they are envious of what each other has. Yes, they both have good things in their own right, but they're billionaires multiple times over. And they're still jealously guarding what they have. They're envying the fact that the other person has accomplished whatever they have accomplished in their life. Capitalism is a competition, but life exists through cooperation. Envy never does anybody any good. That was the lights flickering here. We have a big thunderstorm outside. So if the power goes on, I'm going to keep recording. Just a little bit of real life intruding. Oh. I'm in the basement, so if you heard that thunder, yeah, it's that kind of a storm. Speaking of storms, one of the sins I find the most interesting is arrogance. And this ties in with envy beautifully. People are naturally arrogant. There are a lot of people out there that don't really understand anything besides their own needs, their own perspective. They live entirely within themselves. Now, that's good or bad depending on your interpretation. But a lot of people don't strive to see the world outside of their own little box. Whether that be a Christian fundamentalist, an Islamic fundamentalist, a flat earth person that wants the world to revolve around them. And you know what? Most curiously, arrogance and envy are really, really wrapped up around academia. It's quite an accomplishment to get a PhD. It's quite an accomplishment to get a master's. Hell, it's quite an accomplishment to get into college or university. That being said, there's two ways to go about it. There's people out there that have their PhD, whatever high level of education they may have, multiple doctorates, engineers, physicists, you name it, that are completely cool, down-to-earth, normal people. They'll sit with you, have a beer, and talk about the mysteries of the universe. And there's another group that believe they're God's gift, and they're arrogant, and they want to show how much knowledge they have. And if you step outside of that little bit of knowledge, you're not worth their time. There's also a group of anti-intellectualists that I was talking about a few episodes ago. And they don't care how much you've studied. Your knowledge doesn't... Well, that was a good one. I hope that's not a sign. But I'm not on their side, for the record. But they are mad because people have accomplished more than them. So they seek to minimize that accomplishment by saying, so you got all that book knowledge. Doesn't do you much good in the real world. And unfortunately, both views technically have a point. You do study bloody hard for a PhD. I know 3 people and a 4th one going through for their PhD. And it's a lot of work. I was on the track towards one, but I'll be honest, I had a boss who was jealous of me. And I told him I was going back to school. I've been on the same shift for a couple of years. Started at 5 a.m., was done at 1:30 o'clock, so it's 1:30. So I could rush, make it to afternoon classes, and still have time for studying, get to bed, do the same thing the next day. Took a lot of coffee, a lot of willpower, but I was doing it. And he said to me, look, I need to bring somebody onto your shift because, you're going to take a vacation, stuff like that. And I said, sure. And then as time went on, I had classes registered, and I said, I need to get back on my 5 a.m. shift. Oh, we're still training the guy, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, I said, okay, this is the last day that I can do things. Well, we've decided that we're going to keep you where you are, and we're going to keep this guy where he is. I was annoyed because I had explained months in advance that I had intended to continue my education. As it turns out, this particular boss was once a semi-professional hockey player, and his backup made it through to the pros and is actually a pretty famous person. And he was bitter because he never got that success. He wound up with a desk job, he was pushing papers, and he always wanted that fame. So the idea that one of his employees would be able to go on and achieve something higher than him just stuck in his craw. So he sabotaged me, quite consciously. Now, where is he today? He's still in that office. I'm busy doing other projects that are, quite frankly, more fulfilling. So, I'm not going to say what goes around comes around, but his envy of the fact that I had a chance to become something better cost me personally. And it was also his arrogance. I was one of his subordinates. I couldn't possibly be more educated than he was. So he did what he could to shut me down. This is a cycle that's repeated over and over throughout the world. I mean, in South Asian cultures, and I'm going to be very vague on purpose because not all of them do this, but they have what's called a caste system. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You have your holy people, that your rich people, your middle people, and your poor people. And then you have your untouchables. And this is true for more than one country. Don't think that because I'm saying this, I'm singling any particular country out, because it's not simply one place. It's kind of the way society once was. And indeed, at one point in the Western world, we did the exact same thing. The Prince and the Pauper, the old fairy tale about the prince and the poor child trading places, was astonishing. It was unthinkable. It was a subversion of reality, because a prince would never want to go among the commoners. Commoners were out there tilling the fields and tilling the ground and squatting in the dirt. Whereas a prince is in the castle, he wouldn't be curious for anything more than a day. But that's the thing about arrogance. Arrogance leads you to assume that you are better than everybody else. You are the prince, even if you are the pauper. If you are at the lowest totem pole, you're there. You're better than everybody else around you. You deserve to be in a higher station. Life is unfair against you. And that's arrogance, honestly. Yes, there are plenty of very talented people, wonderful human beings who are kind and beautiful and nurturing and just great to be around, who, because of an accident of birth, wound up in the wrong situation in life. Tale as old as time. Look at the United States, the inner cities. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people, kids, born every day who are never going to make it out of that situation. They're going to grow up poor. They're going to live poor their entire lives. And it's not because they lack any talent. It's simply because accidentally, the way they were born, the way they're grown up, they're never going to get the opportunities that other people do. It's a waste of talent. It's a crying shame. So we can't really look down our nose too much on South Asian countries, because it's the same over here. We all know parts of our city where good people don't go, because that's where the bad people are. There's, I can think of a few in my city that, they're very limited in scope, but at the same token, you don't want to be there at night. A certain pool hall that I'm thinking of, you don't want to be there at night. And that's just because the gang colors there are more prominent than a gay pride parade. I got nothing against gangs. I got nothing against gay people. I'm just saying they got all the gang colors there, and you are scared to knock into the wrong person. But again, that's arrogance. Gangs are another form of arrogance. But it's more of a populist arrogance. By joining a gang or an organization or anything, you're saying you are elevating yourself above the rest of the world. You, by having membership in that organization, are making yourself a better human. And this is true for the Lions Club, the Masons, the Shriners, all those organizations, the Hospitallers, all that. Most people in those organizations are cool. They're like your bikers, where they're a gang, but they're really just a bunch of 50-year-olds who like to go bike riding on the weekends, like motorbike riding. And the same is true of, Masons and Shriners and Lions clubs. There are people who get in there and they want to have all the bling. So they become, your masters, your presidents, your whatever they can do to possibly get up. And it runs them a fortune. It ruins marriages. But these people will still do it because they're arrogant and they think they deserve that recognition. Arrogance. Of all the sins, I think arrogance is perhaps the one that is the most prominent in 2021. All you have to do is listen to any, quote, debate, end quote. It's not a debate. I mean, I'm involved in a so-called debate at the moment, and I'm trying so hard to be high-handed, and I'm complimentary, and I'm saying that's a good point, and I'm bringing up evidence, I'm bringing up everything, and the other person is just so determined to sling mud and do, they have no time for me, but they always have time to write out a 6-paragraph response, and it's arrogance on their part. It's a little bit arrogance on my part, but I'm at the point where I'm just keeping it going because I'm like, really? This is at the point that it's funny. And people are like that all over. It's on the news. You get those people that come across, like the 45th president legal team, that were so arrogant that they thought they could lie to the people and get away with it, and then tell a court that they were lying to people, and the court would let them go. We covered that on the Silverlight show. And the sentence for them just came down. And they are being censored, they're being blocked. They're getting a lot of actions taken against them. Now, they haven't lost any money yet, as far as I know. But they, again, were so arrogant that they thought that they could lie, cheat, steal. And the sad part is people believed it. They swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. They're parroting the 45th president's line to this day, despite the fact that line is a lie. And it's not unique to just that particular group. I see it right now because there's an election coming locally, and being the political atheist that I am, I see people coming out with statements like, if you don't support X party, then you're supporting socialism. And as a joke, I quoted Star Wars. I said, only a Sith deals in absolutes, which got me a laugh, but the person took notice. Because I wasn't going to come out and challenge them. I wasn't going to debate them on party platforms. This is a different person, by the way. But they saw the joke and they had a laugh at it. But if I had gone in there and in my own arrogance started saying, you're wrong because this, that, the other thing, who knows? You can't quote party platforms because party platforms are just the lies that the party wants to tell to get themselves elected. Not a shock to anybody who's listened to the Silverlight show, but it's party arrogance. And it leads to political arrogance. And once political arrogance sets in, unfortunately, no matter who you get in office, they can be the nicest person in the world, but they're going to get that political arrogance. They deserve that power. They deserve that recognition. They deserve that office because nobody knows it better than they know it. From the lowest part of society to the top, we're all rats scrambling for the top of our little heap. Once we get to the top of our heap, we're at the bottom of the next heap. And we're arrogant if we think we are anything more than just bags of flesh and bone, ultimately doomed to the existence that we have on this planet. I'm sorry, that's a bit of a depressing way to put it, but that's reality. That's just the way things are. We're blessed with this little bag of gelatin inside our skull that works sometime and makes people self-aware. And that's the antidote to the 7 deadly sins, is being self-aware. I confess, I didn't do a very good job of it during this show. I lapsed into personal stories a couple times. It's something I'm trying to do less of. Because I know you're not here to hear about my stories. You're here to hear about the Silverlight's opinions. But my arrogance led me astray because people tend to resonate with an example. They want to hear someone say, yeah, I've had the same thing happen to me. And that's unfortunately a good communications technique, and it's hard to turn an eye to it. But even here, where Silverlight is attempting to document the 7 deadly sins, I fell victim to one of them. I inserted myself into a situation that could have all been done third person. It would have been a little more awkward with the language. Oh, there's this person and this thing. It would have been awkward, but it would have been just as listenable. The difference is I'm self-aware, and I know that was horrible of me to do, and I'm apologizing to my audience right now. But it's something we all have to work on, being that little bit self-aware. It's too easy to get trapped in those 7 deadly sins: gluttony, sloth, envy, and arrogance. Especially arrogance. Because nobody likes to think they're wrong. It's one thing you and your best friend, you screw up. You have a good story to talk about later on. But it's another thing when you're in a stressful situation, you see a way out, you want to be the leader. You want to be the one people look up to. And it's kind of a natural thing. But the problem is there's people that just expect it to be handed to them. And that's really the problem with our modern political system. People get into politics because they expect things to be handed to them. They're envious of people in other positions. They're lusting after a cabinet position, after a directorate position, after whatever it might be. And they're arrogant enough to assume they are the best for the job. You'd have to be, because otherwise, why would you run? You're exposing yourself to a ridiculous amount of abuse. It's a grueling schedule. You got to be up first thing in the morning. You got to be running around, addressing classrooms, addressing universities, going into various places. But all this time, while you're doing all this, you have to earn your living somehow. And that's why most people stay out of politics. It's not cheap. It's really a big ego trip. So you got to have money to be able to do it. And it's a real sign of arrogance that you're willing to put thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands, or millions if the position is high enough, just to show you're better than the other people, that people are willing to listen to you. And since we're in an election season, and you know what, we're almost always in an election season. It just never seems to go away. There's somebody always up trying to do something. But it just shows some people have money and power, and they want to keep that money and power. And they'll do whatever it takes to keep that money and power, except share it with us. And that's the real part of arrogance. Not sharing. Remember, to create a society, you have to share. But the people in power are never going to share any of their power. It's not in their mind. They want to have it all. They want mine, mine, mine. Stalin at no point in his life sat down and said, I wonder if I should give more power over to the people. Tiberius, on occasion, would say, I don't want to do this job, and would start the process of giving the power back to the Senate, and then he'd run away and not finalize it. It's a tale as old as time. The big chief model, whether that chief is male or female, whatever it is, once they're in that position, it's darn difficult to get them out. And you know what? Almost every big chief, every politician, no matter who they are or how horrible things that they have done, they all have their backers. And this is the world that we live in. So, thank you for listening to the Silverlight Show. If you liked it, please hit like, share, and subscribe. Remember, use your mind. It's your most valuable tool, because only you know what you are thinking and what your motivations are. Keep them in mind. It's a valuable survival tool. And other than that, we hope you have a fantastic day.